water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast that explores solutions for sustainability and equity in water. I'm Travis Loop, co-host for this episode.
And I'm co-host Jose Aranda. This episode is part of the Color Water series, which features interviews with diverse experts from communities across the country.
About 1 million Californians face persistent challenges accessing safe, affordable drinking water, particularly in rural and disadvantaged communities. California's SAFER program, led by the State Water Resources Control Board, takes a holistic and proactive approach to address these inequities, providing funding, technical assistance, and regulatory tools to ensure clean water for all. In this episode, Adriana Renteria, Director of the Office of Public Engagement, Equity, and Tribal Affairs, shares insights into her journey from a childhood shaped by water inequities to her leadership in driving solutions.
Well, it's great to have you, Adriana, talking about your water work and your experience. And why don't we get started? Could you share a little bit about your background growing up and how did you connect with water?
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I am from Merced, born and raised. My family is from Jalisco, Mexico. And my parents were migrant workers. So I spent some time in my early childhood in California and then some time in Mexico, alternating over the seasons. But I have family all throughout the Central Valley. A lot of my family is involved in agriculture in one way or another, whether it is farm working or dairy or transportation, restaurants, packing. Agriculture is a really big part of my family and their livelihoods. Because my family is located throughout the Central Valley, a lot of my family also live in unincorporated rural communities that depend on domestic wells. So growing up, when we'd visit my family, I would always be curious about the differences in water. I was real curious and I would always ask a lot of questions. So for example, when we cooked at my tia's house, I would always ask, why is it that when we're at my tia's house, we have to get water from a jug? When my mom at her house, she gets water from the sink. How come sometimes when we're at my uncle's house, and we're taking a shower, the pressure all of a sudden drops? Or how come when I'm at my cousin's house, I can't just brush my teeth with their sink water? And so growing up, I would ask all of these questions and my family would always answer, that's just the way things are. And even as a kid, I knew that that answer didn't really feel complete or I didn't feel satisfied with that answer. So as I continued my education and I learned more about environmental injustices, I started to better conceptualize my lived experiences within the environmental justice frameworks. A couple of years ago, I moved to Visalia and I started working in water. I worked with the Community Water Center, which is an advocacy nonprofit that works to ensure that all communities have access to safe and affordable drinking water. And that was really my first connection in learning about water governance, and water decision making. And that experience then led me to where I am now at the State Water Board. So that's kind of a little bit of my journey with my early childhood and how that influenced the decisions I took later on.
Fascinating journey. Not many or most of the people that work in the water sector in the U.S. really don't have necessarily a background like that to really realize the true value of water, and that there's plenty of communities and people in this country that don't have the same access to it. So I imagine that was really formative for you. So there in California, the State Water Resources Control Board, the Office of Public Participation, really want to learn about this. What is the control board? What's the Office of Public Participation? What do you all do there?
Mm-hmm. Well, to begin, I'll begin with the California Environmental Protection Agency, which is the umbrella agency. This is a state agency that is created to protect public health and the environment. And the water boards are one of the agencies underneath this umbrella. And when I say water boards, I'm actually referring to 10 semi autonomous boards. We have one state water resources control board, also referred to as the state water board, and 9 regional water quality control boards, also known as regional water boards. And the water boards have a mission of preserving water resources for the benefit of present and future generations. So, all of that includes setting drinking water standards and making sure that public water systems are meeting those standards to provide safe drinking water, allocating surface water rights for the benefit of all uses of water, protecting water quality, and then supporting with funding and enforcement to make sure that those standards are being met. The regional water boards, there's 9 located across California, and they protect water quality through an effort called a basin plan. So they have a plan where they identify the rivers, lakes, and streams in their area, what those rivers, lakes, and streams are used for, and what kind of water quality standards need to be maintained so that the way that people use that water is safe for them. So that is the water boards in a nutshell. The office that I direct is the office formerly known as the Office of Public Participation. We are
Oh,
currently in the
I used the old name. I used the old name there. Sorry about that. I forgot about this exciting rebrand that you're doing.
That's okay. That's okay. We're the office formerly known as the Office of Public Participation, but we are now known as the Office of Public Engagement, Equity, and Tribal Affairs. And that's a new change that has come about in really reflecting on the growth that the water boards has had in those 3 areas. So I'll kind of give a snapshot of what those 3 different buckets of work are. The first bucket of work, public engagement, that includes our work to support safe and affordable drinking water access, so community engagement within the Safer Drinking Water program, are supporting environmental justice and public participation in general water boards processes, and then ensuring language access throughout. Our equity is really focused on our internal workforce equity. And this is a new focus that we have had in the last couple of years, looking at how the water boards can be a workplace that's welcoming and inclusive of everyone. And then the third area of our work is tribal affairs. And this is our area of work where we work directly with California Native American tribes on a government to government level to collaborate on water decision making. And our office provides coordination, support, and training for all of the programs and projects in the water boards.
Yeah, I appreciate your journey from being a kid with your family, experiencing or really living the results of the systems that are in place, and now you having a better, very nuanced understanding of those institutions that in some ways have inherited those systems, right? And like you said, racial equity and environmental justice have not always been at the center of those institutions and those systems. And so it's great to hear and see how those systems and institutions are evolving because of the people that are now there. We've heard a lot about the work that California has been doing to fix those inequalities. And one of the programs that has been in the spotlight has been the SAFER program. So can you share a little bit more about that program and how it touches on racial equity and environmental justice?
So, SAFER stands for the Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience Drinking Water Program. And it is a program that was established after the passage of Senate Bill 200, which established the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund. And this is a fund that took many, many years to pass through the legislature. many community leaders and grassroots organizations had been pushing the state to really address a gap in our drinking water. And that gap is that although the majority of Californians do have safe drinking water, there is a percentage of Californians in rural, unincorporated, low income areas that still lack access, many of which are domestic well owners. And so the purpose of creating this fund is to provide funding and resources to address that gap. So this is a program that was really created by environmental justice grassroots organizations and continues to be centered on those communities most impacted by lack of drinking water access. What's really unique about the SAFER program is that it's not just funding. It's not a traditional grant or loan program where people apply and then the funding is distributed. Instead, what we realized is that the communities that don't have safe drinking water, they often also don't have the capacity to apply for funding. And so the program is holistic in nature. It really begins with looking at data. So on an annual basis, we conduct a needs assessment that gives us information around which water systems are failing to meet safe drinking water and which ones are at risk of failing to meet safe drinking water standards. With that information, we could then prioritize our funding and our outreach. So we work directly with water systems that are failing to get them on a plan to come back into compliance. So for some, it may mean that they need technical assistance for planning. Some may lack managerial support. Some may need training. It really depends. Each water system is unique. So we work directly with water systems instead of waiting for them to come to us. The other component of this is community engagement. In those rural areas, a lot of times, especially in areas where there are water systems that have been out of compliance for many, many years, there's often a social political challenge that's taking place. And no amount of funding is going to overcome that if we're not engaging everyone in the community. So community engagement is a big part of developing the solution and implementing it so that it's sustainable long term. In addition to those tools, the SB 200 also gave the water boards two regulatory authorities. It gave the water board the authority to require that two water systems consolidate if one water system is failing to provide safe drinking water to a disadvantaged community. So this is big. This means that we don't have to wait for water systems to voluntarily consolidate. We can support that consolidation. We still advocate and support for voluntary consolidations wherever, but this tool really helps in areas where a disadvantaged community has been stuck for decades. The other tool that we have is the ability to appoint an administrator. So for those water systems that don't have the capacity to create a plan for themselves or to bring themselves back into compliance, we can appoint an entity to work with them for a year to develop that plan so that they can be sustainable long term. And then the last two tools that we have as part of this program is number one, funding. We have the ability to fund not only construction, but also technical assistance, planning, community engagement, and emergency services. And guiding all of this program, we also have an advisory group made up of 20 different representatives across the water industry, including residents and owners of domestic wells that help inform the board on the direction of the program.
What a holistic suite of resources and support you provide. It's really rounded, and it makes sense that that's the way you actually make progress. Can you share a little bit about that growth or progress on rebuilding trust and engaging with communities that in many ways have been left out from the system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say in the early part of the SAFER program, we were really focused on projects that were close to being ready, projects where a consolidation made the most sense, projects where we knew what a solution was going to look like. And now that those projects are underway or completed, we're now entering the we're transitioning to the next half of the SAFER program, where we're looking at projects or communities where a drinking water solution isn't as clear, where there isn't as much water resources or water quality safer sources, where there is maybe more dispersed rural communities. And all of those projects and communities are going to require a higher level of engagement and more regional coordination. So
Mhm.
we're currently working in areas where we're not only looking at individual communities, but really looking at sustainability on a region wide scale. And that requires not only a lot of community engagement, but education and a lot of transparency, especially in areas where projects have been attempted and have not been successful. Many communities might feel, well, why should I participate in this new effort if the old effort didn't come to fruition? And so, in these areas, it has required a lot of patience and a lot of reminders that um, it's really important for us to be accountable to our word and to ensure that if we're making a promise, whether it's about a public meeting or about a potential solution, that we're sure about that before we make that commitment so that we can um, be accountable to the community and follow through on what we say. So that's where we're transitioning in the SAFER program. We're really now looking at exploring regional solutions for those harder to reach communities and communities where individual water solutions may not be effective. And then for
Mhm.
what I would say for tribal is the state water board doesn't regulate tribal water systems. Tribal water systems located on federally regulated land are regulated by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. That
Mhm.
being said, a lot of times, what we have found in our engagement with tribes is that sometimes there are gaps that the federal government isn't able to address. And the SAFER program has been able to work with tribes, with US EPA and Indian Health Service to help fill in some of those gaps. So I'll share one example of a gap that we were able to help support. Um, in working with the Guaitu Guaitu Paiute tribe, we were able to provide funding to support an operator's salary and point of use, point of entry filtration devices while their project with Indian Health Service to repair and build a new well was being developed. So while the long term solution was being developed, the SAFER program was able to help in that interim to make sure that they had not only safe drinking water while their project was being worked on, but they also had a staff person on board managing and maintaining those filtration devices. That's something that the federal government wasn't able to provide funding for, and that the state SAFER program was able to help with. So, when there is opportunities for us to collaborate with tribes and other federal agencies, that is a place where we're continuing to look for opportunities.
Mhm. And can you share a little bit about how did that actually happen? Did you all in your department had already been in conversations with the tribe, and then as the program came up, you shared the opportunity, or did the tribe reach out to you because they know that you're helping communities? Like, how did it actually, that collaboration came to fruition?
Yeah. I'm trying to flash back. Well, how did this happen? When the SAFER program came up, we received a lot of questions from tribes. What does this funding mean for us? Can we apply for it? When is the grant going to be open? But again, the SAFER program isn't a traditional grant process with an open and a closed period. It's ongoing funding based on prioritizing failing systems. And so we would meet with tribes to learn more about their water system. Um, and then we got connected with US EPA and Indian Health Service to learn more about the resources and funding that the federal government provides. And as we started to learn more, we decided to have ongoing interagency coordination meetings taking place between the state and the federal government so that we can check in on a regular basis around tribal drinking water needs that may be coming up. And if, for example, there is a gap, like a common gap that has come up is When the federal government approves a project, the funding for the construction is set. But as we know, inflation changes those numbers really quickly. And so by the time that the project is ready, there's a big gap in construction funding that the tribe sometimes isn't able to cover on their own. And so by having these coordination calls, the federal government and our partners are able to say, we have this gap. Would the state be able to help us with this? And so we've been able to find opportunities to work collaboratively in that way. So I would say this really came up because of tribes looking for opportunities to partner and to engage on drinking water solutions. And we now have an internal coordination mechanism so that we are able to identify opportunities before they become emergencies.
It's always interesting to hear the how some of these things happen because it's instructive. There's lessons learned. There's advice people can get, ideas, and all that stuff. So I appreciate Jose pushing on that one a little bit. I just lastly, what kind of lies ahead for your office? What are some of your like near term priorities as you continue to deliver on your mission?
I would say in the last couple of years, our office has gone through a lot of transformation. We've grown not only in staff, but also in our mission and in our priorities. And we have really been focused on building our internal infrastructure to be able to support the water boards in their engagement with communities and with tribes. Where we are now is we're looking to engage the public and tribes on a couple of policies that might solidify our practices in a more structured way. So whether it's with tribal engagement or with language access or with engagement with environmental justice communities, in 2025 we anticipate having more formally developed processes to ensure consistency across the boards.
Cool. Well, Adriana, it was phenomenal to catch up with you. Like I said, it's great to get some insight into water governance and actions in California. Thank you so much for joining and for all your work out there on behalf of people and clean water.
Thanks so much. It was great chatting with y'all too. Thanks.
Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you for listening to this podcast, a part of the Color of Water series, which is a collaboration between Waterloop and Water Hub. To find all episodes, sign up for email updates, and connect on social media, visit waterloop.org.